Welcome to The Boost. My name's Leon Hitchens.
I'm Pablo Calvo.
Today we're at The Rise talking about 2024 trends. '24 trends. We're almost in 2024, 2023. Lots happened, right?
A lot, yeah, absolutely.
I think way more than we could have predicted. We pulled a few articles. I pulled Pinterest, we've got some stuff from Google, and then we've got some general content marketing from Asana.
And some of our own insights.
Yes, hopefully, maybe. The big one I think we want to start with is like what Google's predicting. When I was going through it, some of it was like very brand safe stuff. It was setting up or scaling up sustainability efforts. Talking really about marketing operations, the importance of agencies and branding addressing their carbon footprint, environmental impact. I think some of that's important. However, like to consumer doesn't really make any changes or anything. Like it's not there. The one that I think Google's talked about and we've done a recording on now is responsibility with AI in marketing. Like how is it used?
Yeah.
There's like an ethical AI use in marketing, setting KPIs, how it's used, and then also just figuring out like how do you like keep sensitive data, trade secrets without
divulging.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's going to be the really big push in 2024 is figuring out AI. There's a lot of questions on like how do we use it, how do businesses use it. Everyone is rolling it out. I think Walmart just rolled out an AI like phone app for their employees.
Yeah.
We use it in our business. I think we do a lot more like notes, topics, summaries and stuff like that. But figuring out how AI fits into it is going to be a overarching trend and conversation throughout the whole year, and I think for years to come.
I think part of the way I see our role at the very least is, we spend every day learning about the technologies that we use on a day-to-day basis, right? The people that come to us and ask us to help them implement these technologies into their businesses, here's a trade secret, guys. We're figuring it out just like you are. But we spend most of our day looking at that while you guys are probably, working on other things. There is still the difficulty of figuring out how to do it, not just ethically, but you're using it as a learning tool, you're using it as a marketing tool, you're using it as a, a research tool as well. So for us to be able to do it effectively and to be able to support clients in that type of work, even if you just are doing it for yourself in your own business, I guess that's always going to be the tug of war, just like our last episode, in terms of like, how do you use it responsibly and frankly, legally, right? Because that's what's really in the courts right now is trying to be defined is what are the legal parameters in which you can use content, sometimes not even produced by you, in being able to become an expert in that subject matter. Right?
Yeah, and every single app is rolling out AI. Like every single app that I have Grammarly, which I actually really love because they had some of the best like spell check and grammar check.
Yeah.
They've got AI in there to help you kind of adjust your writing. And we see it in Google Docs. Our page builders in WordPress, Elementor has an AI now. WordPress through Jetpack has an AI. Like everywhere AI is popping up.
Yeah.
And I think to some extent it's just checking the box on the marketing checklist of like what are we doing this year? Like AI check, we've got clients adding it in, but I think the part of it is how do we market that as an effective point and value prop to people? How do we differentiate it from, hey, you already have ChatGPT, and what value does this add to the product, the tool, and then also how you're marketing?
I think the difficulty though is, okay, so there's all these different versions of AI being integrated.
Yeah.
Right? As a consumer, even as a professional, how do you identify if it's any good? Right? Fair. I mean, if you're going to spend money on all of these different solutions, for premium purposes, you buy a product, they say, oh, we've got the best AI. Everyone has the best AI.
Yeah.
But in the end, they're all, I believe, at least in my opinion, I believe that they're all subsets of the larger ones, like ChatGPT or Bard, that have really just billions of data sets integrated to create that that capability. So sometimes I kind of caution, at least myself or sometimes clients, and saying, hey, I know you're really excited about jumping onto the AI bandwagon, but how do you validate it? How do you test it? How do you make sure that it works? I remember, I think it was earlier this year that we had a client that wanted to integrate, AI chatbots on their site to just be able to handle all of the chat functionality, to be able to support, prospects and that sort of thing. And they didn't even know whether it would work, but they wanted to adopt it.
Well,
right?
and that in the Asana one, there's a report from, I think it's Salesforce, that talks 89% of customers want to know if they're talking to a human or an AI during a support interaction.
Right.
On a chat, impossible to differentiate, they've learned the nuances. If a chat bot responds too quickly, it just gives away the human. Same thing with Google's AI voice assistants. They've found that when a AI does ahs, pauses,
they throw people off.
They throw people off, and it almost tricks people into it. So there is that part is really figuring out is an AI a good support model tool, and I think it really is, but also distinguishing for those consumers that, hey, you are talking to an AI. Just like when you call into a phone tree,
right?
You always ask, talk to a human.
Right.
That is your keyword, or some version of it.
Yeah.
And I think as we push into the part into there is showing and being transparent with your usage of it in certain scenarios. If you're going to write a headline, you don't have to disclose that. But if you're going to put your support model through AI, you need to make sure you at least give them some path to escalate it. Okay, hey, the AI is going to generate a ticket for you, and a human will reach out.
What's funny about that is that, this isn't necessarily a trend, but just sort of an observation on that potential trend of the integration of AI into businesses. And I learned this actually when I started using, more of these large language model tools in my day-to-day tasks. One of those things was, for example, saying please and thank you and all of the human niceties that you normally are accustomed to in writing and communicating with another, person, right? Well, with AI, you're supposed to be very dry, very direct. You're supposed to tell it, almost command it to what you want it to do. And I get the feeling that that's probably going to start spilling over to where people are going to either expect that they're dealing with an AI platform of some type, where I think that personality is going to start, in human interaction, is probably going to start scaling back, even in instances in which it's supposed to be present. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen, but I do feel that there's going to be a much more transactional way of communication in the future.
I think that's pretty fair because, more of the nuances of a human interaction have moved, or I guess fallen away as we've gone with the internet, how you interact. It is okay to text somebody K. It's not, it's a borderline thing, but you used to write letters to people, you couldn't just respond K. There's some stuff you don't call people without texting them first. There's these things that you didn't used to do, and even holding doors open, hats in buildings. A lot of these things have evolved, and I think this stuff will evolve for us. Yeah, and it's a good point.
It's definitely impacting the way that I do things every day. Yeah. I mean, we were chatting also about another trend is. And I think this has been in the news for some time, but it's just the elevation or the importance of, or continuing importance actually, of voice search. Yeah. Right. I mean, we were having a conversation off camera before we started the episode, which was that Leon doesn't use voice search. And guys, I'm gonna be very upfront. I'm very close to 50. I'm on the border. Every new gray hair I'm counting, but the interesting thing is that as I've gotten more used to using, my phone as an actual computer, like I just speak to it. I tell it to give me results. I'm watching a movie with my wife, and oh, look, such and such actress or actor, what exactly have they been in? And then I ask, my phone. I don't type these things out. For one, I've got fat thumbs. I always mess up what I type. Now, the only thing that annoys me is if I talk to it and it completely screws up what I said. But it is changing the way that I interact with technology on an ongoing basis. I do feel like that's going to be an evolving trait. I mean, I'm teaching my kids how to do that. They don't do that. I ask them, hey, use your phone for what it's intended for. Make a phone call with it. No, it's a gaming device for them. Right?
Yeah, and I think that's starting the evolution because, when we were talking, I am using voice notes more and more. Mm-hmm. Like I am sending a voice note to somebody because the act of typing it out, I can do it, but executing on the nuance and tonality of it is really hard. So if I need to send something with a question and I want to express these are my 2 points of view without sounding like an I'm gonna leave a voice note, and I think more and more people are starting to do that. I know more of my friends that have started doing that, and that's where I picked it up from. I was like, okay, this is somewhat acceptable. I honestly listen to them at 2x.
Yeah.
But I've never really thought about searching with my voice as often. I do have Google Homes in my house, and those do serve a purpose mainly for weather.
Right.
Weather, questions on conversions, recipes, turning off lights. Those are the focus points for me.
Yeah.
But the optimization of that, when I ask it a random question of what year did the war end? What is the main recipe in a cake?
Yeah.
Those sites that pop up, if Google doesn't know the answer, it tells you, hey, I found it on simplyliving.com. And there, those optimizations, are super important. It's kind of when we do an article, we often write to a question.
Sure.
So, if somebody's asking the best way to do marketing in 2024, we're going to say, hey, SEO, voice, AI. We need to make sure we've got a sentence or two in every paragraph that answers the question right off the bat.
Yeah.
And I think to your point on AI, that's even going to shift human consumption. Humans scan and skim. We've all got, and I say this all the time, we've all got an attention span of a goldfish.
Goldfish. Yeah.
And we're training our children to have that too. TikTok, Vine, YouTube Shorts. The fact that my daughter can't even watch a full TV show because she wants to hit the next video shows that shortness and to the point content is always going to excel in this day and age. And I think the optimization of that for SEO is often, yes, you're going to have probably 2,000 words on something, especially on a recipe, but you need to answer their questions off the bat, right away, and then go into your...
That's the value proposition, right? You're saying this is why you're here.
Yep.
You're giving them the answer to their question, and then you can add to that. But you also assume that if you're extending too much, that everything that's going to be said on the back end is going to be ignored, right?
But I think that's okay on a human consumption point.
Yeah.
We're writing for two audiences, right?
Sure.
We're writing for the SEOs, bots, and then we're writing for humans. The humans read the first sentence. They maybe buy your product. If you're selling something, click an affiliate link.
Yeah.
The bots on them will turn around and consume that and say, we need to rank for you more. So it's a necessary evil in the SEO world.
Yeah.
But I think the voice optimization is going to require a focus on the to the point content.
Sure.
And when we write, I always try to make sure if there's a question, we've got a client, how do you get out of DWI or something like that?
Sure.
Or speeding ticket. The first paragraph needs to be very clear, concise, and to that point. And then you can break down, hey, here's the process. Jam the keywords in, put the other information in, have the notes and everything, but that first part needs to be easily consumed.
Right, to increase engagement and to make sure that they stay.
Yeah,
right?
and to all of that is kind of like playing into the next trend, which is social media, like
Right.
I think social media is changing as a core part of what we consume and interact with. Influencers play a bigger part in our social media world than ever before. Brand accounts are less important. Like when somebody comes out and they're part of a brand, like Elon Musk, he was Twitter or X. He is Tesla. Like you cannot differentiate the two. Just like others out there are the brand that they own and themselves. And I think there's going to be a lot of shifts. X doesn't have advertisers. They're moving to a payment model. Facebook's starting to realize like, hey, we've got like news is less of an important thing than it was before. Like how Facebook was a news platform. They're saying no, we were going to focus on Instagram. We're going to focus on Threads, which is really focused on like short form text. TikTok is really focused on like more types of like information content, like bite-sized pieces. I think most of the videos are a minute less. And then you've got other platforms chasing that now. Like just like back in the day, it was all Snapchat. Everyone chased stories. That was like a bite-sized piece of content. 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Same thing now. Everything's there, and if you trust somebody, you're gonna find that influencer, no matter who they are, business or personal. You're gonna say, "Hey, I'm gonna trust them way more."
I'll follow them.
Yeah,
right,
like I know, like in the B2B space, there's like the car salesman that teaches car salesmen how to sell. He's got a course and everything, but he always talks about, as a car salesman, you have to like be separate from that Toyota dealership you're at. You have to be a unique character, and that's how they go viral. That then get people to come in. Even bartenders, like I see bartenders on TikTok that constantly have big followings, and that bar is okay with it because they're like, hey, you're getting in more people. You're more people. That person leaves, the followers follow. They go, and I think that's more often than not that. It's kind of showing that social media has shifted from what it was 10 years ago, where Wendy's was the really cool one out there. It is now about a person, and that person being authentic, showing what it is, and then talking to an audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I think of the influencers, as we're talking about, right? There's those that really drive through entertainment. There's those that actually drive through knowledge and expertise. And I think in the end, if you're able to educate your audience, regardless of what medium you use, to me, that has the value that actually draws in more engagement, right? Because you mentioned it earlier, like, okay, if I'm trying to learn about something, you're going to do a search based on what you're trying to learn about. So you have to make sure that you're properly optimized for that content. But in the end, I mean, you have to show value. You have to give your audience something, right? In order for them to feel like, okay, I trust what you said earlier. So there's a level of trust, whether that trust is based on fact, or it's based on opinion, or just a complete fallacy. In the end, they still have some type of trust to follow that, thought leader per se, right? So, it's really funny because I use social media very differently. I use it primarily for entertainment, but then I also get served things on certain platforms. Like I'll be on Instagram. I've learned a lot of things that I never intended nor searched for, just because it's being served to me. Now I'm learning about certain things like, hey, these are life hacks, and these are things that you can do in these situations. And
I think that has popped up a lot more, and like the ones that I'm following, mainly on my TikTok, and it's very controversial when you say you consume TikTok because of the ties to the government of China, but the things that I consume on there, I feel like are educating me further in all parts of my life. Like I follow a girl that talks about design trends, and she talks about web design, physical like office designs, all of that. Super insightful. I have somebody that talks only about Excel sheets. Like I've learned so many formulas from that one lady that I'm just like, I've gotten better at Excel, Google Sheets, really. But there's a lot more of that out there. That's how I find out about news. There's a news anchor in Austin that I follow. There's a weather person. That weather person, she talks about what's happening in Texas, the dynamics of it. And it's more bite-sized that I can consume it.
Sure.
Then, like Corey, our producer, like he loves these like long form YouTube. I cannot consume that. Like it's just like tutorial videos on YouTube. I don't want to watch a tutorial video on YouTube because when I go to it, it's 5 minutes of like nonsense. I want to scrub to it. That's why I like the TikToks and stuff. And these influencers know that. The new set of influencers know that. Yeah. I think there was a subset of YouTubers that kind of realized like, I'm going to play more towards the algorithm than to the users. And now people are kind of like shifting back into that. Like more people are also doing newsletters. More people are doing like owned entities. They're doing, Patreon groups. And I'm joining more of them. Like I've got like a little budget set aside of like some good creators that I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I never did that before this year. Like, and I kind of see it, even like X, Twitter, like more people on there where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go consume your stuff outside of this platform. And never before that, because I kind of realized like, hey, there's people that I really like and I just want to keep following them.
Right.
And I'm going to contribute to them. And I think those people are, making really good businesses out of it.
In the end, you're getting value from it.
Yeah.
Right. You
and
feel whatever that is.
Well, and I hesitate because I connect with them, quote unquote. I'm having a parasocial relationship with them.
Right.
Where, I know them, I know their life, but they don't know me. Like they could see me in the street, but if I saw them on the street, I'd be like, damn, that person does Excel sheets. That's very cool.
Or the guy that's handing out, tens of thousands of dollars because you follow them, right?
Yes,
exactly.
But more of that I think is happening. We're craving relationships and I'm kind of falling into that more and more. And I think more brands are doing it where, for example, like I think it's the Washington Post. They have a TikTok account. I don't think of the Washington Post on their TikTok account. I think of the 3 people that are on it. Right. And when one of them left, I followed to the next spot.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of interesting that I was actually like, oh my gosh, this person's leaving like this company. I'm going to go to that. Like they're not so much there. So I think we're going to see more and more people pop up that are tied to a brand. Almost like a Duolingo. You see the bird or whatever. Right. I think you're going to see more humans as the face, and then as those humans leave, they're going to build their career as like almost like an actor of sorts.
Sure.
As somebody educating. Like more B2B businesses need to have that. Right. A person that's the face. Like for better or worse, Elon is the face of all of his companies. Jeff Bezos was the face of Amazon. Like you don't know the face of Walmart. Like. No. So I think you're going to see more and more people being the front and center of a brand.
And I also feel that probably not a trend that I was necessarily reading on, but just in general, the things that you mentioned, which I'm sure is still relevant, and that is just the importance of video for that connection, right? I mean,
it's required.
How much written content do you consume? Just like you said, Corey wants the long form, YouTube content. I only use that when I'm like building a bookshelf, like I need to follow instructions step by step and pause it in between, so for me, it's like, okay, that's highly valuable. But as far as like short form, 30-second clips or even smaller, right? But the video is what gets you kind of engaged, right?
Yeah, almost always.
And the challenge
the connection.
Exactly. So the connection is one piece. But the other part that's, for me, is like that big chasm that's really hard for me to kind of communicate effectively is when, say, for example, when we're working with a business owner, big or small, and you say to them, you need to produce more video. Use it however you need to use it, whether it's through social, whether it's through your website, whatever it is. And the first thing they come out and say is, oh, I don't have time for that. Well, I can't really do that. I don't know anything about video. I don't have the money to hire somebody to do that. So that means that the competition, right, to generate views, eyeballs, followers, brand, loyalty requires it now.
Yeah.
So
it is required. Like
it is required. Yes.
Like, there is a dealership that I see constantly on TikTok. It's called like Vic Vaughn Toyota. I think it's like on the other side of town.
Okay.
The guy is a character on all of the TikToks and YouTubes that I've seen of him. I don't know who he is. He's just like the deal maker, and it makes me want to go shop at that dealership because I'm like, does this guy play a role
in that business?
In that business,
Right.
like, what is he?
Sure.
And I think more business owners need to realize that it doesn't take that much time.
No.
You can do a 15-minute clip, and I think there is like, even to myself, like, I grew up with pictures, I grew up with like text. The video portion is a little weird to me still. Like, I haven't learned that skill set of being in front of a camera perfectly. Where do you look? How do you look? Is eye contact required when you're having a conversation? Like, all these
Right.
things that it's almost like media training, but the requirement for social media is not any of that. It's being a personality and conveying like that. If you're a pest control company, you should be talking about pests and
Right.
pest and the control of them on TikTok, on YouTube, on any video platform.
Right.
To anybody that will listen, because in the end, what's going to happen? Someone's going to like watch your video and say, "Oh my gosh, like, you can get rid of the earwigs via this chemical." Like, wow, I don't want to go to Amazon and buy that and administer it as a chemical. I'm going to just call this company. And that is going to accelerate them so much further than doing, some other portions. They do need to do the core groundwork of, hey, when somebody Googles you after they heard that name, do you show up? Do you have directories? All of that.
Right.
But social media is going to need to have a face. It's no longer just like sending out a list of things and everything. Like we've got people, if, for example, we've talked about coffee in the past. Like, I follow very specific coffee ones. They need to go to those, coffee brands out there and go and say, hey, like, use our coffee. Like, here's the face of us. Like, let's go collaborate. Like, they need to go do that. It's more organic and less about like, hey, we're going to tweet out and, post on Facebook and Instagram some really cool product shots. Like, that's still needed,
Sure.
but you have to do that extra effort.
So, Google had promoted this idea of what the new frontier of value.
Yeah.
Right. Which goes beyond cost, so it's not price, so what exactly is it? I mean, if it's more than price, if it's more than, than what a typical consumer would care about your particular product, what you're talking about is it's conveying a feeling, which marketers are supposed to be doing, right? They're supposed to be generating a feeling in the audience. But in terms of getting that loyalty, you have to offer something that the audience is going to connect with. And the fact is not everyone connects the same way. Like I might look at more from a value standpoint. Am I learning something? Whatever that is. Am I learning about your product? Am I learning about the subject? Am I learning?
Yeah.
I'm a learner. That's one of my skills. That's one of my top 5, strengths. From StrengthsFinder. So I enjoy anything where I feel like I came away better because of it, right? So for me, that's the first place that I start. Would I pay a premium for a brand that leads in the teaching? Probably.
Yeah. Well, like HubSpot, for example, they lead with the teaching. The education portion of all of their stuff is education driven. They bought a media company to do that. I think, there's, to your point, like, if we want to put it in a good sentence or two, is like, brand loyalty used to be on price, quality, and like some customer support.
Right.
I think brand loyalty going into 2024, 2025 is going to be about connection, and then those other things are important. Like, if you shop at Walmart and you love Walmart, if another store pops up and they've got a connection and like they're forward center, like here HEB, they put the humans at the forefront. Like when people go shopping, they say hi to the same, workers over and over.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be more of that, of a shift from like a faceless like logo and brand to the what value do you add beyond the product that you serve? Like, are you going to teach me about, the pests that come into my house, how to prevent them, what things that I could do to stop that? Are you going to, be a friendly face that I know and talk to and, have a connection with? It's almost like Americans, and I think the world is driving towards that third place. And they want that internet to be that third place, whereas a restaurant, a bar, or some sort of gathering place was the third place before. Like, we don't have a third place; it's the internet, and we're trying to make it our like connection piece of community, and something where you're like, hey, do you know pest control? I'm just focused on pest control right now, but you go, oh hey, yeah, like go talk to Tyler at Pest Control 123. Like,
right.
You want to have that thing where people go, oh hey, like this is the person. Like when I think marketing, I go, hey, I know Pablo. I go talk to him about SEO. Like
right.
He is the person.
Yeah.
And like there's a brand behind you and all of that. But I think that's going to play an important part to the authenticity, the like authentic like conversation. Even if you use AI, it's still authentic because it's you.
Yeah.
And then, like you going out there using video as a medium, and then adding those extra factors beyond just like brand values, price, quality, and all of that, it's going to be important.
Well, what's interesting about authenticity is one of the things that I learned very early on was that in order to be authentic and to be perceived as wanting to help somebody from an authentic place, you have to remove cost. You have to remove price. Because if generating the revenue is the most important thing to you, I don't know how much trust you're going to generate from somebody that they feel like you're trying to get them to pay, and that's the only way that they're going to get your help. I do feel that there's a certain level of altruism that has to participate or be part of the process where you're trying to authentically help somebody. Let them know that you're not trying to help. I mean, how many times have we given somebody free advice? Things to look for, things to do on their own.
Just to be helpful.
Just to be helpful, right?
Nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not just, you're doing it because you really do want to see that person or that company succeed.
Yeah.
If they can't afford you, that's unfortunate, but that's...
You point them in the right direction, you help them, you give them a referral.
Right.
You maybe tell them some things that they need to do, and you're just being a good steward, like a respectful human being. And I think, we've touched on, how AI shifts like conversation, all of that. Like, there's still a human connection, and that's going to be the important part of it.
Exactly. So that's incredibly important for being able to succeed moving forward in this year.
So I think we did AI, we talked about SEO, we talked about social media. I think we dabbled on this customer experience focus, like personalization, improved UI and UX and all of that. It kind of ties to like, making sure there's education, all parts of that. There is two left, which is virtual reality marketing and consumer privacy.
Yeah.
I think virtual reality is a shorter topic.
Yes.
In my view, it's kind of like the voice stuff for VR. Like, I think it's been an ever-present, the metaverse, all of that happening. I don't really see that like a 2024 trend. I see it as like a 10-year journey. Like, I just don't see most brands on a small business basis being able to do anything in VR. I think the big ones are going to be Walmart, virtual shopping, IKEA, just doing that. But I don't really see it being an important part of like a small business's marketing tool. No,
the time is always going to be a factor, and that does require a certain degree of expertise and production and technology. I think we have to look at it from the standpoint of, from a small business perspective, what kinds of things can they implement into their day-to-day operations that doesn't take a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
And would it be possible to potentially hire someone to lead that sort of effort, even at a topical level, where they're not necessarily doing only that job? But I do think that over time, most businesses are going to have to hire somebody, right? Whether it be internal or source it, but eventually they're going to have someone within the business that understands the topic.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's one of the gaps that we run into a lot, where you have a client that comes to you and says, Leon, you're the expert. I don't really care. How do we get there? Just get there. And I'm just handing the keys over to you. That's always a recipe for disaster, right? Because then they come back later and said, oh, well, you didn't tell me it was going to take this much time. It's going to cost this much money. It's going to be all of this effort that I don't have time for. Well, you said to take care of it, right? Yeah. So I feel like there is, almost like a requirement if you're going to do business today. There is a requirement for the business owner to become knowledgeable, even if it's not deep knowledge, but they need to understand the rules by which you're playing, right? The platforms that you're leveraging and the why you're using it.
Yeah, they have to put themselves in the consumer's shoe in the end.
Yes.
Like, how are people going to find your business? If you're a restaurant, Googling is probably one of the things, but also like food influencers coming to your spot.
Yeah.
Like doing videos of it and sharing it. There's a, and I go back to TikTok all the time. There's a TikToker, I think he's from Houston. His name's Keith Lee. Mm-hmm. He goes and does I think he sends his family and gets the food, tells the experience, rates the food.
Yeah.
And that's part of the marketing. It's required because that person's going to bring in an audience that you probably never tapped.
Right.
And all of that, you have to understand it. Like, even if you don't understand, this day and age, you can't say, I don't understand computers. You just can't. You have to know, hey, okay, great. I'm not the best at it, but I can know how to PDF something. That's required. I think the same thing in all of the marketing. Hey, I know what SEO is. I know what Facebook ads are. I know what influencer marketing is. I don't know how to do any of it, but can you educate me on it is the important part.
That's the key, right?
Guide you through the process more than hand it off. And the business owners that are engaged to some extent of hey, what do you mean we have to write 1,000 articles and build 100 backlinks? What, how does that span? How long is it going to kind of impact? How do we get these influencers in? All of that's going to have to be a discussion, less than a, this person went off and did it. You wouldn't just let, did in a restaurant, you just wouldn't let your chef or your team doing all the cooking just go make food.
Right.
You would kind of check the quality. You do that. Same thing with the marketer. You got to understand that, hey, they're doing all of this. What are they? Which buttons are they pulling? What recipes are they pulling from? What ingredients are they using? Okay, great. You don't have to understand all of it. Just to go another analogy with the food, you don't have to understand why the garlic makes the dish taste so much better, but you have to understand that the garlic is
part of the dish.
That dish,
right, of course.
So same thing with the marketing, and I think it is a core part of it.
Yeah, agreed there. All right, well, I think that covers everything we wanted to talk about. Yeah. But as always, make sure that you comment, follow, whatever it is that you want to learn about, please let us know as well, because our episodes are driven not just by our own knowledge, but also by what the audience cares to learn more about.
No, that's all I got.
All right. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Boost.